Hi, PJ Scott here with Veterans Forum, and I have a treat for me. I'm talking to women veterans today, and if you've never watched before, I'm a Navy Wave. We were still called Waves when I put my hand up in November '71, and I think that changed somewhere in '76, because when I got out in '79, we were called WINS, W-I-N-S, Women in Naval Service. It's probably yet changed again, and I think females are called sailors just like the guys now. But when I went in the early '70s, Vietnam was still going on, and we were called Waves. And I'm happy to say that I have another Waves with me today. Her name is Jackie Tron. And Jackie, tell us, why did you go in the Navy? I'm sure you must have heard that a million times, and you always will.
I couldn't wait. I was still in high school. My sister joined the Army, and I had to wait until I was 20 with my mother's signature to get into the Navy. And she went with me down to Philadelphia. I actually joined in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
I remember visiting Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It was our little break from boot camp in Bainbridge, Maryland. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I used to go to...
Now, were you trying to compete with your sister here? Older sis went in the Army, and you wanted to outdo her or something?
No competition at all.
Yeah. But did she sort of blaze a trail for you? I mean, that wasn't the typical thing women did.
If she would have gone in or didn't go in, I knew what I wanted to do.
How'd your folks handle it?
Well, my father was dead, and my mother, she was all for it. She had to sign, and I had a friend who had been in the Navy during the war, so she was trying to tell me, you know, this stripe means this stripe and a half meant coming home on a train, you know.
Right.
And I just couldn't wait to get in. And my sister, being the homebody, picked her as close as she could to Lancaster, which was Indiantown Gap, and I knew nothing about this area, so I picked Seattle, Washington, and I think they thought they were still...
Oh, so you definitely want to go on an adventure.
Oh, yes,
you weren't going to stay close to home.
No
you wanted
way.
to see the world.
Yes.
Okay, and when did you go in? What year?
1949, March 1949.
Oh, okay, so you were really...
I was in 3 years, 2 months, and 18 days.
Did you even touch the Korean? Was the Korean War over with?
Yes, where I worked, I was stationed at the receiving station in Seattle, and where they got their supplies, their uniforms and stuff.
Now you have some boot camp pictures, I believe. That's
the boot camp.
Okay, this is
and that was in
graduation and boot camp, and the uniform is
in Great Lakes.
Great Lakes. You went to Great Lakes. When I went in, the uniforms were very similar. The skirt was a little more narrow around the knees, and we had bucket hats.
Yeah, we had bucket hats.
Although we were issued those berets, but I just never had an occasion to wear mine.
Well, that's the one we wear most of the time.
Now, how long was boot camp for you? Mine was the longest 10 weeks in my life.
You know, I can't remember.
Well, did you have a good time?
I had the best time of my life. I didn't have to worry where to go, what clothes to put on, making food. I went in and sat down and ate and pulled out a uniform, and I'm ready to go.
Well, that's true. When you're in the military, gals, you never have to wonder what you're going to wear. You have your winter uniforms and your spring
and everybody was the same.
Now, these athletic pictures here, it looks like a basketball?
That's basketball.
Now, was these taken, where were these taken?
These were taken in, actually at what is now the park over in Seattle. I was at the Sandpoint Naval Air Station at that time.
Does that still exist?
No.
Okay, so I was going to say, I never heard of it when I was, I heard of Whidbey Island because I was at North Island, and there was a lot of traffic back and forth between Whidbey and North Island. So you actually got what you wanted. You wanted to go to Seattle, and you got it?
Before I went there, they have give you placement tests. And I thought I wanted to go into the medical department just for something different. And I thought that would be so cool. Well, after the placement test, they sent me to storekeeper school.
Oh, storekeeper,
so it was much better.
And where did you go to storekeeper school? Was that also in Great Lakes?
San Diego. No, I got to see San Diego.
Oh, okay.
And, the checked out all the museums and all the parks and the zoos. And
San Diego can be a beautiful place. It's just so heavily populated.
well, in those
Jesus,
days
talk
it wasn't
about
that
traffic.
populated.
Yeah, all right. Well, it was when I got there in '72. It was pretty populated. So.
But that was just 2 different years.
Oh, so
and I never knew I was not neat until I saw this picture.
I take it you must have been pretty good in basketball. She's got several pictures.
Well, basketball.
Now, were you
Baseball.
competing against
The
Army women,
and Navy,
maybe?
different places around there.
Okay. Yeah, I never really got involved. I didn't have the time, quite frankly. Oh, and here's baseball. Well, that accounts for how you've stayed in such great shape. Pays to be active. Yeah, I never had the time to get involved in athletics when I was in the military. All I could do was just walk back and forth to work as fast as my long legs would carry me. So you went to storekeeper school and then you came to Seattle.
Because I already knew I was coming to Seattle. And in those days, of course, we took the train. And I was just ecstatic, you know. And I felt completely at home when I got off that train in Seattle. I don't know why, maybe it was the trees, and I called myself a transplant from Pennsylvania to Washington.
Well, I've only been here 3 years. You've been here a good more years than I have. I consider yourself a native, honey.
Just about.
Yeah, right. Now, at the receiving station, what exactly were you?
A supply clerk.
Supply clerk. Okay.
I worked in the office typing things and memorandums, letters.
Now, some women I know, a gal I knew at church in Turlock, California, was a Navy Waves, and she was stationed in Washington, D.C., and she never came in contact with any men. I mean, in her world, sailors just didn't exist. Now, did you work
We worked
with the men?
We were a mix.
Well, so was I. When she was talking to me about that, I just thought, man, that wasn't my reality at all. Now, did you have problems with because you're a good-looking woman here. Did you have problems with the sailors?
No,
or?
Not at all.
You know, I really didn't either. I've heard some women claiming to have problems with men, but I never really did.
I dated off and on.
Oh, I never lacked dates, but I mean, you know, there never was a problem.
We were all one cohesive group and a good time.
Now, when you got out of the service, you said you did 3.5 years, something like that?
My husband made me get out of the Navy.
Oh, now, okay, now that's an interesting point because, you know, when I went in '71, I can remember Navy Wave saying that at one time if you just got married, you were out.
You were out.
You were out. So you were of that generation.
I
you got married.
I was in for 2 months after. My husband would always say, all they do is take the good shore billets away from the sailors.
You know, I used to hear that as well, that the women, the Waves, were taking shore billets for the men.
But they needed the men.
However, I used to tell the guys who would say that, I want you to go down to the admin office and tell me what you see. And they'd walk down and they'd come back. And I said, well, what'd you see? And they'd usually say a bunch of plump, middle-aged women, which I have now become. 30 years later, I'm a plump, middle-aged woman. And I said, if I wasn't sitting here in this uniform, that's who would be sitting at this desk. And she wouldn't be taking her turn doing the duty, pal, so can it and move along. You know?
I never had too much duty. I don't know how I lucked out, but I never had a lot of duty.
Oh, I didn't have a great deal of duty, nothing like my son. Oh, for heaven's sakes, after 9/11, my son was having duty every 4 days, it seemed like. Yeah, it was pretty rough because then the next day all he'd do is sleep. So sometimes different jobs, different divisions, somehow they do require a lot of duty where other sailors seem to not have it as much. So, well, what is one of your more memorable moments as a Wave before we let you go?
Just having fun. We had a little clique where we'd go out and together in the mountain and overnight trips.
Now, you stayed in the Waves barracks,
yes.
or did you have?
No, I went to the Waves barracks.
How was that? I didn't find barracks life very nice.
Well, there were two-tier bunks, and we became close friends, and to this day we still keep in touch with each other.
Oh, how wonderful. Now, were they actual rooms?
Yes.
I didn't get a room.
Well, they weren't full rooms. They were each individual. They were segregated.
These were cubicles, and I mean, you could hear people talk way down at the end of the, you know. So no, they weren't rooms at all. And I didn't stay in there very long. I got BAQ and Conrads pretty quickly. Now, did you use your benefits when you got out?
No, I didn't, because I got married and my husband was still in the Navy. My husband had 30 years in the Navy.
Oh, wow. Okay, 30-year Navy man. Okay, he certainly did his bit for country. And are any of your children in the military?
We have 3 children. Our oldest son is retired Navy.
Oh, okay.
My daughter in the middle, she's an NIS agent and in Washington, D.C. And my youngest son is just made captain, and he's in Hawaii.
Oh, wow. You got Navy blood in you, for sure.
And they're all in supply.
Is it genetic?
Yeah, probably.
Well, listen, Jackie, I enjoyed having you on Veterans Forum. Hang on, I got some more female veterans to talk to. Hi, with me now I have some women who were in the Army, and they are Ruth and Isabel. Isabel, you like to be called Izzy, I understand. Right. Now, Ruth, tell us when you went in the military and why. I mean, I don't care what woman. I was constantly asked, why did you do that? So here I am asking you, why did you do that? Why did you join the Army?
Because the war was going on, World War II, and I did not have any brothers to enlist, so I enlisted. I was working at the time, and I joined in actually in 43, but I didn't leave until 44 when I joined a troop train from Boston that went down to Fort Oglethorpe for basic training.
Fort Oglethorpe. Okay, you're going to have to excuse me. I'm Navy here, and I'm not from. And where is this Fort O?
in Georgia.
In Georgia.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not familiar too much with Georgia, except people told me it's hotter than you know what in the summertime. And what do you remember about boot camp?
It was more or less a lot of exercise and so forth.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
I remember being quite shocked that I was supposed to learn so much. I had watched too many old World War II movies where all you saw them do was dig ditches, and I was supposed to be able to identify all the ships and subs and all this stuff. I was just floored. Now, when you got out of boot camp, did you get any special training?
No, I had signed up to as a clerk typist, and I was to go to Fort George G. Meade in Maryland.
Oh, okay.
And I was there until VJ Day, actually, and then they sent us all to Camp Adair in Oregon. So I did go from coast to coast.
Oh, okay. So you basically did a lot of typing and stuff, and at the tail end of your enlistment or the tail end of the war, they sent you to Oregon?
Yes, Camp Adair. It's no longer there.
I was going to say, I never heard of it.
It was near Corvallis and Salem.
Oh, okay. And is that what brought you to the Pacific Northwest?
Well, no. Right after the war, I did get married to a veteran.
And was he from this area?
No, he was from Missouri, so then
So you've really crisscrossed the country.
Yes.
Okay, well, Izzy, let's get you to jump in. Why did you join the Army? And did you have your mama's approval, or was she shocked?
I didn't have to have my mama's approval for anything. I had worked for the telephone company for 6 years, and a friend of mine said, hey, they're opening up enlistments for the Army. He says, let's go. And I said, okay. So we went down and...
You were done with high school and everything?
Oh, yes. I'd worked 6 years for the phone company.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then I assumed that I would be going as a telephone operator. It didn't work out that way. But,
and where did they pigeonhole you?
Well, the basic training was at Fort Lee, Virginia. That's near Petersburg.
Okay.
And I forget how many weeks, but I arrived there in November of 40. I joined on the 29th of October, so I arrived there in November and went through basic, except for the last week. They took 4 of us, 5. They were called recruits at that time.
Right.
and sent us to New Hampshire.
Now, did you go in during the Korean War?
No.
When did you go?
The Korean, that was 53, and I went in 48.
Oh, okay, so you went in right before then, just like Jackie did, basically, right before. Okay, all right, so were you in like...
Well, they pulled us out to test this Arctic clothing for women because they were anticipating sending women to the Arctic regions. So they sent us up to New Hampshire.
Now, why in the world would somebody get the brilliant idea back then to send women to the Arctic region? I never heard of that. How interesting.
I don't believe it ever came about. Many years later that I found out that all this testing we did was for naught, but they don't know.
Right, right.
So, anyway, so I actually did not get to graduate with my class because we were gone. And on returning, they sent me to supply school.
Oh, okay.
Which was very interesting because it took me 3 weeks to learn to type 5 words a minute. So they were getting the band started, so they thought, well, let's put her in the band because it was on my...
Now, what musical instrument do you play?
I played French horn.
Oh, okay. Now, did they know that up front when you went in at the recruiting station? Did they ask you if you had any special talent?
That's, you know, when you're signing up, they list the different things that you have done and your
so you said you said toodaloo to supply and started tooting the French horn, basically?
I don't think I would have made it in supply if I can't type. So.
Okay.
Play the horn.
And let's see your pictures before we cut away. You brought some really nice pictures. Oh, Ruth, what a babe. I mean, she looks like a movie star. Doesn't she look like a movie star there? I imagine you just had dates out the gump stump, huh?
No, just the one.
Yeah. I dated a long time before I chose one. I had a lot of fun dating different guys. The problem was if they were at sea, just by the time I was getting to like them, they'd say toodaloos, babe. And by the time they got back, I was with somebody else. So. Now, did you meet your husband in the Army?
Yes, I did. Before he went overseas and then when he came back. And so I didn't...
Now, I didn't ask you, how did your folks respond to you going in the Army?
Well,
how did they feel about that? I mean, you mentioned that you didn't have any brothers, so did you feel kind of like, gee, you had to do your bit for the war for lack of a brother?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And I went and signed up with a friend that, who, by the way, is still living in Washington here.
Oh, good.
And, she's 95.
Oh, wow.
And she was a recruiter. But no, my mother knew it, but I didn't tell my father until after I did, and he thought it was really nice that I had done that.
Yeah, it was a little late for him to say otherwise once you've sworn in. Kind of sneaky there. Now, when you got out of the military, did you use any of your benefits? Or do you just use your husband's benefits? You know, that happens so frequently for women. We just, to get a home loan, you use the husband's benefit.
Yes, I guess we did so long ago.
Right, right. What about you, Izzy? Did you use any of your benefits you had coming to you?
At one time, I thought about using, you know, what do they call it, the loan, you know?
Right, the home loans.
Home loan. And, but it was such a rigmarole that I didn't use it. At one time, I did use the schooling.
Oh, good, good.
But I was only in college for 1 3/4 of a quarter. Because I got involved in a bowling alley. And things didn't quite work out to do both.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So of course the bowling alley didn't work out too long either.
Now, did you meet Mr. Wonderful in the Army, or?
No, I didn't. That was prior.
Okay.
In fact, many years before I went in the Army.
Okay.
And he was killed in a train truck collision. So.
Oh, sorry.
I just
gave up after that. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. Now, do you have children?
I have one son.
And did he go in the military?
He just, well, a few years ago, retired from the Air Force.
Oh, okay. All right.
After 24 years.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So, and he lives.
Now, what do you think, before we're winding down here, what Izzy, was your most memorable event in the Army?
I don't really have any most memorable events.
Well, what did you
Having been in the white band, I mean, we traveled around the country, the different Army areas, primarily for recruiting purposes. But
and did you keep up playing the French horn after you left the military?
yes, I did for a while.
But you never made a living out of it?
No.
Yeah. Did you end up going back to the telephone company?
I tried, but if I had gone back to Bellingham, where I had enlisted from, I could have, but they said,
Now,
too old.
have you stayed in contact with any of your old WAC buddies?
Yes, I have.
Oh, good, good. And how about you?
Yes, I have.
Well, Ruth, did you have anything outstanding in your memory banks about your Army time that you want to share before we come to an end
Well,
here?
I worked in the Adjutant General's office all the time, so that it was interesting.
Yeah, I bet. You must have saw some top brass come in and out of there, huh?
Once in a while. So,
yeah, I would imagine so.
So it was an interesting time.
Well, I hope you wrote all these stories down for your children or your nieces and nephews, because these stories get forgotten if you don't write them down. Well, listen, we're coming to the end here, and I want to thank all my guests. Jackie, the Navy Wave. It was nice to have her here, so I didn't feel totally out of field, and nice to have our Army women here. Anyway, I want you to continue praying for our troops and continue praying, well, for our political leadership, that the Lord would grace them with some major wisdom. Remember to pray for those families that have lost loved ones, and to pray for our soldiers, male and female, that have sustained a lot of injuries. You know, it's my understanding at the DAV that for every dead soldier, there's around 35 that are very seriously wounded. We need to keep those people in our prayers. Until next time, God bless.